you ever thought about running for public office? Or maybe you know somebody. She is the hardest working public servant around. Wait, is her name Leslie? Leslie Nope? She should definitely run for office. Or maybe there's a man in your community who everybody respects, they would definitely vote for him. And that's what democracy is about. That we the people can run for office, that we the people can vote for somebody like us, and that once in office, they'll represent us and our interests. But could you, or she, or he actually run? The cost to run for President of the United States is now over $1 billion. Okay, maybe you weren't going to run for President of the United States, but even to run for local office here in Portland, it's now over $1 million to run for mayor. Even to run for your local city council, it often costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. And who has that kind of money? Well, there's only a few people who can write checks big enough to have that avalanche of money that is going into political campaigns now. And the fact that candidates have to go there at the foot of Big Donor Mountain in order to run an effective campaign, it changes the way that our democracy works. It limits who can run, namely people who have access to big money. It changes how they run, namely they spend a lot of time asking for money. And it changes what they think about even when they're in office, because they've spent so much time with those big donors, they start thinking about their issues. And all of that changes the way that we relate to our government. We feel like it's bought and paid for. So I have good news. We can change this. And we can do it by first, 92% of us want to change this. We think this is a problem. Left, right, we all think we need to reduce the influence of money in our democracy. And we can do it by creating another source of money. So this one, instead of being Big Donor Mountain, is Citizens Peak, where there's still enough money to run a campaign, but instead of coming from just a tiny slice of America, just those few people who can write big checks, it comes from everyone, from voters, from people like you and me. And when we, the voters, are the ones selecting, we're the ones financing the campaigns, then we'll know that we're back on top. So in 2015, Seattle voters overwhelmingly approved an anti-corruption law. It's the Honest Elections Seattle Act, and it makes every voter a potential donor by giving them 4 $25 democracy vouchers. So they have $100 that they can spend on the candidate of their choice. But the candidates, to get the money, they have to agree to play by the honest election rules. So they have to agree that they won't accept checks for more than $250. They won't spend more than a specified amount on their campaign, and they won't fundraise for shadowy, independent expenditure campaigns. So let's talk about how it works right now and how things will work once people have democracy vouchers. So right now, who can run? Often, the ugliest part of politics is the election before the election. After the Civil War, many southern states used a white primary, where only white people could vote, and that ensured that only white-approved candidates made it to the ballot. So on the ballot, sure, black men could vote, because that was the law now, but they could only have the option of voting for somebody who'd already been approved by white people. Now, thankfully, we don't do that anymore, but now we have this money primary, where only people who are themselves personally rich or who have the approval of rich people get to the ballot for the rest of us to choose between. So if we changed that so that we had democracy vouchers, then voter-approved candidates could make it to the ballot. So if you're somebody who has support from people in your community, but no corporate sponsors, those people in your community, once they have democracy vouchers, they could become your sponsors, and you could run. Or if you just speak for people in your neighborhood, they like what you have to say, but maybe the elites don't like what you have to say so much. Well, the people in your neighborhood can give you their democracy vouchers, and you could run. So let's talk about how you run, what you have to do to run a successful campaign. So right now, you got to go to Big Donor Mountain. So if you want to run for office, you are going to skip those working class house parties and you are going to go straight to the view homes with white people with big bank accounts. Does that sound a little exaggerated? Do I really know what you're going to do when you run for office? Maybe you're going to play it differently, right? I'm sorry. That's what you're going to do. Because you need a lot of money, and that's where you can get it. So we know this because in Seattle, before Honest Elections Seattle passed, 66%, 2/3 of all of the political giving in the city came from 0.3% of the population. So we're not even talking about the 1%, we're talking about the 0.3%. And this isn't just any random 0.3% of people. These people are disproportionately whiter, wealthier, and live in view homes. So this is Seattle, and the darker green areas are showing where most of the political giving comes from. And this is where the wealthy people live. So the dark orange areas are neighborhoods with a median household income of $160,000 or more. Lighter yellow means $70,000 or less. And here's the overlap between the big money zones where you need to go to fund your campaign and where the wealthy people live. If you're running under the current system, you're going to spend more time talking to wealthy people than talking to everybody else in your city. These are view homes in Seattle. So the brown dots mean homes with a view of Puget Sound, Lake Washington, and Mount Rainier. And here they are overlapped with the money zones. If you're running under the current system, you're going to spend more time in view homes than in everybody else's homes in your city. Finally, here's where the white people live. So the darkest purple zones have the highest white percentage, and lighter purple means more people of color live there. Again, a lot of overlap with the money zones. If you're running under the current system, you're going to have to spend a lot of time talking to white people. How would you run with democracy vouchers? Well, if every person in your city is potentially a $100 donor, you just have to go where the people are. You're going to go to house parties, community meetings, town halls, street fairs, anywhere where there's people. That's where you're going to go and ask both for votes and for vouchers. So here's what we estimate giving will look like once everyone has a democracy voucher in hand. And you can see that the green is spread much more evenly across all neighborhoods in the city, because that's what a democracy looks like. Okay, so what are you going to think about once you're in office? Are you corrupt? Are you corrupt? Now, under the Supreme Court's definition of corruption, it only means one thing. It means that you're in office, somebody walks in with big bags of money and says, hey, I got some money for you if you vote the way I want. And you say, thank you for the money, I'll vote the way you want. But I think those Supreme Court justices must have been watching too much House of Cards. Or actually, maybe not enough House of Cards, because can you imagine Frank Underwood saying, oh, thanks for the money, I'll vote the way you want? No, it's much more subtle than that. So under the current system, to get there into office, you had to spend 4 hours a day, half your workday, for years, just calling rich people and asking them for money. To run for mayor of Portland, there will be weeks where you spend 40 hours a week just dialing for dollars. Even to run for a city council seat or an uncontested seat, you still have to spend an hour or two a day just hobnobbing with the donor class. So you've been doing that for weeks, months, years. You've been going to the house parties, you've been eating the mini quiches and drinking the champagne with your new BFFs and talking about what their lives are like. And they're telling you, about their family, about how great their kids' private schools are, about how big their tax bills are. And day after day, view home after view home, you're having those conversations with those people until you are finally attuned to what they want, what they're concerned about, what their lives are like. And it might have been a while since you've had a conversation with somebody whose kids go to public school, somebody who needs food stamps to get by, somebody who needs the Head Start program so that they can go to their minimum wage job. It's so much harder to think about what those people want, to keep those concerns top of mind when you don't have time to talk to us because you need to raise more money. So maybe you're not convinced that just talking to rich people for 4 hours a day would really change the way you would think about policy. Unfortunately, the proof is in the pudding here. So a recent study looked at the relationship between what we want and what policies get passed. And they saw that if 90% of us don't like this policy, we hate this policy, we don't want it to be passed, it has a 30% chance of passing. So 50% of us like it. So this, should have even odds of passing. It has a 30% chance of passing. If 90% of us love a policy, and can you imagine what 90% of Americans could agree on right now? Democrats, Republicans, Tea Party, how could we agree? It would have to be the we like watching kitten videos during our lunch break act, or the babies are adorable act, or, oh yeah, an anti-corruption act that 92% of Americans support. So this magical unicorn of a policy that 90% of Americans support has a 30% chance of passing. In other words, we are statistically irrelevant. What we want has zero effect on the policies that we get. And that is not the case for the wealthy, the elite, the donor class, the corporate interests. When they want something, they get it. Our government responds to the economic elites. So maybe this is what's good for GM is good for America situation? Our government responds to the elites, but they want what's good for us? No. So here's some policies that we like. We think that all children should have access to good public schools. And the elites say no. We think that if you hold down a job 40 hours a week, you should be able to have a roof over your head. And the elites say, maybe not. We think that no one in a country as rich as ours should be hungry or homeless. And the elites say, well, some people should. We think that if you work hard enough, you should be able to go to college. And then that's not just good for you, it's good for our country to have opportunity and an educated workforce. And the elites do not agree with us. We think that we should not cut Social Security, and the elites say, cut it. With democracy vouchers, you would not have to spend all of your time talking to the people who want to cut Social Security. You would be able to talk to everyone. And after spending days and weeks and months talking with regular people like us, it would be easy to keep top of mind what their lives are like, what their concerns are, what policies they want, and it would be easy to make that vote. So maybe you're still not totally convinced that this is how it works. But if we can make that shift from you have to go to Big Donor Mountain to you can go to other voters and you can be a voter-approved candidate, we can change the way that you run and the way that you think once you're in office. So remember I said at the beginning that 92% of Americans support reducing the influence of money in politics. It turns out 91% of us feel hopeless. We think we can't do it. We think the elites are just too powerful. The donor class, they just have their claws too deep into our government for us to take it back. So here's the thing. We can do this. Seattle had an idea, and they passed it. The voters are changing the way that elections work. And we could make our own version here in Portland, in Gresham, in Multnomah County, Corvallis, Bend, in the state of Oregon. We could keep pushing this innovation in democracy until we have a democracy, a country of, by, and for the people. Thank you.